calculating. A coaching staff in flux by design. This is not chaos. It's controlled change. According to reporting from Calvin Watkins, Cowboys assistant coaches have been told they are free to explore opportunities elsewhere. That kind of move only happens when a new coordinator wants full authority over his room, his terminology, his teaching style, and his culture. Christian Parker is not inheriting a staff and tweaking it. He is auditioning it. At the same time, several Cowboys coaches are already at the Senior Bowl, preparing for practices next week. That detail matters. It means the evaluation process is happening in real time, with Parker and the front office watching how coaches teach, communicate, and lead under pressure. This is a tryout period for coaches. The Christian Parker effect. Parker's arrival as defensive coordinator immediately changed the power structure. Defensive coordinators who are truly empowered don't just call plays, they build ecosystems. That means hand-picked position coaches, unified terminology across units, shared teaching philosophy, coaches who align with how the DC wants to attack offenses. Parker is expected to emphasize versatility, communication, and adaptability, especially in the secondary. That lens will shape every staffing decision. Current defensive staff. Who's under the microscope? Let's go position by position. Aaron White-Cotton, defensive line coach. White-Cotton's future is the biggest question mark. The defensive line production has been inconsistent, especially against the run, and Parker may want a different voice and approach up front. White-Cotton isn't out, but he's far from secure. If Parker prioritizes aggressive, attacking fronts with heavy rotation and movement, White-Cotton will have to convince him he's the right teacher for that vision. Status. Unclear, leaning vulnerable. Dave Borgonzi, linebackers coach. Borgonzi is respected, but linebackers are often the heartbeat of a defense, and many coordinators prefer someone they've worked with before in that role. If Parker brings in his own linebackers coach, it would not be surprising. Status. 50/50. Andre Curtis, pass game coordinator. This role becomes tricky under a new DC. If Parker wants tighter control over coverage concepts and route distribution rules, the pass game coordinator role could either be redefined or eliminated. Curtis may need to show flexibility and alignment with Parker's coverage philosophy. Status. Role dependent. David Overstreet, II, secondary/CBs. This is one of the most important positions under Parker. If Parker's background leans heavily toward defensive backs, as many expect, he may want his own secondary coach. That doesn't automatically mean Overstreet is gone, but it does mean he's under intense scrutiny. Status. High-pressure evaluation. Darian Thompson, secondary/nickels. Nickel defenders are critical in modern NFL defenses. Thompson's ability to coach hybrid players who can cover, blitz, and communicate will matter a lot. This role could survive if Parker values continuity in sub-packages. Status. Slightly safer than most. J.J. Clark, assistant. Assistants often survive transitions, especially if they're adaptable and willing to shift responsibilities. Status. Likely retained in some capacity. Brian Bing, assistant DL coach. If White-Cotton goes, Bing likely goes with him. If White-Cotton stays, Bing's future improves. Status. Tied to White-Cotton. Tanzel Smart, assistant/quality control. QC coaches often stay through transitions because they absorb system changes quickly and handle behind-the-scenes work. Status. Good chance to stay. Outside interviews. New blood coming in. The Cowboys are not waiting around. They are already interviewing external candidates, and the names tell us a lot about what Parker might be looking for. Marcus Dixon, Vikings defensive line coach. This is a serious candidate. Dixon's resume. Rams assistant DL coach, 2021. Broncos DL coach, 2022 to 2023. Vikings DL coach, 2024, present. That path matters. Dixon has worked in multiple defensive systems, including aggressive fronts and versatile schemes. He's coached both stars and developmental players. If the Cowboys want a modern DL coach who emphasizes flexibility and technique, Dixon checks a lot of boxes. If Dixon is hired, That likely signals the end for White Cotton. Ronell Williams, Eagles' assistant linebackers coach. This interview is fascinating. Philadelphia's defensive philosophy emphasizes speed, aggression, and situational adaptability, traits Parker may want to import. Williams has been part of a system that asks linebackers to cover space, communicate quickly, and play fast. If Williams is hired, Orgonzi's role could be in jeopardy. Clayton Adams blocked from Eagles move. Another key detail, Clayton Adams was blocked from going to the Eagles. That tells us two things. The Cowboys still value Adams. They may see him as part of the future, even amid change. Blocking a lateral move during a staff shakeup is a statement. It suggests Adams may be viewed as someone who fits Parker's vision or fills an important internal role. What this all really means. This is not about blame. It's about alignment. The Cowboys are giving Christian Parker the authority to build his defense, not inherit someone else's. Coaches who adapt, align, and communicate well will survive. Those who don't will move on. Expect multiple assistant changes. At least one major position coach replacement. Younger, more versatile coaching hires. Heavy emphasis on teaching DBs and front seven flexibility. By the time training camp arrives, this defensive staff will not look the same. And that's exactly the point. The Dallas Cowboys have officially entered a new phase on defense. And it starts with one decision that quietly set the tone for everything that comes next. Christian Parker is now the defensive coordinator in Dallas, coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles, a franchise that has built its recent success on disciplined structure, physicality, and adaptability. While much of the early attention has been on Parker assembling his coaching staff and installing his philosophies, that phase will pass quickly. Before long, the spotlight will shift to what truly determines whether those ideas can succeed: the roster. Once that transition happens, it becomes impossible to ignore the reality facing the Cowboys. This defense has holes, and not small ones. The most urgent needs are on the defensive side of the ball, and the front office knows it. Fortunately for Dallas, the 2026 NFL Draft offers a rare opportunity. With 2 first-round picks, the Cowboys are positioned to reshape the identity of their defense in a single night, provided they make the right choices. What makes this moment especially fascinating is how well the Cowboys' needs align with the direction Christian Parker is likely to take the defense. Parker comes from a system that values versatility, players who can wear multiple hats, defenders who can disguise intentions and execute complex responsibilities without sacrificing physicality. This is not a scheme built on specialists alone. It thrives on hybrids, on defenders who can blur positional lines and force offenses to hesitate. In a recent mock draft by Pro Football Sports Network's TJ Randall, Dallas does exactly that. With their first 2 selections, the Cowboys addressed the spine of the defense by targeting a hybrid linebacker and a true cover corner, 2 positions that define modern NFL defenses. The names attached to those picks are Arvell Reese out of Ohio State and Colton Hood from Tennessee, and together they represent more than just talent upgrades. They represent a philosophical shift. At pick number 12, the Cowboys are projected to select Arvell Reese, a linebacker who, under normal circumstances, would not be expected to still be on the board. Reese is widely viewed as one of the most impactful defensive players in the class, often mocked inside the top 5. His presence at 12 would require a very specific draft day slide, but as Randall notes, it is not impossible. Draft processes evolve, team needs change, and quarterbacks tend to push elite defenders down the board. If Reese is available when Dallas is on the clock, the Cowboys would be staring at a rare opportunity. Reese's appeal lies in how complete his game is. Early in his college career, he spent most of his time operating in the box, reading plays, fitting gaps, and showing a natural feel for traffic and leverage. Then, in 2025, Ohio State began to deploy him more aggressively along the edge, and the results were immediate. Reese showed he could threaten quarterbacks, set the edge against the run, and still drop back into coverage without looking out of place. That combination is exactly what modern NFL defenses crave. For Dallas, the importance of that versatility cannot be overstated. The Cowboys no longer have the luxury of relying on a single defender to be everywhere at once. With Micah Parsons no longer anchoring the defense the way he once did, there's a need for someone who can replicate at least part of that impact. Reese may not be Parsons, but he offers something just as valuable: flexibility. He can play off the ball, rush the passer, and erase mismatches in coverage. He gives Christian Parker options, and options are the currency of good defense. Adding Reese would immediately change how offenses prepare for Dallas. Suddenly, protections become harder to set. Play action becomes riskier. Short and intermediate passing lanes feel more crowded. Reese is the type of defender whose influence extends beyond the stat sheet. His presence alone alters spacing and decision-making, which is often more valuable than any single sack or tackle. As transformative as Reese could be, the Cowboys' work would not be done. Defense is not built solely from the front seven, and Dallas has been reminded of that reality repeatedly in recent seasons. Even before the decision to release Trayvon Diggs, cornerback was already a position of concern. Without him, it becomes a priority. That is where Colton Hood enters the picture at pick number 20. Hood is not the loudest name in the draft, but his game speaks clearly. At 6 feet tall and around 190 pounds, he has the physical profile teams look for on the outside, but what truly sets him apart is his coverage ability. Hood is a sticky defender, the kind of corner who stays connected through routes, who understands leverage, and who rarely panics when the ball is in the air. Randall's mock draft acknowledges that Dallas should remain patient with Siobhan Revel Jr., whose early professional struggles were more about injury recovery than lack of ability. Still, patience does not eliminate need. The Cowboys cannot enter another season thin at cornerback, especially in a conference loaded with elite receivers. Hood provides insurance, competition, and potential stability. What makes Hood such a logical fit is how cleanly he projects into an NFL system. He is comfortable in man coverage, disciplined in zone, and willing to tackle. He plays with confidence, but not recklessness, trusting his technique rather than relying solely on athleticism. In a defense guided by Christian Parker, that discipline matters. Parker's scheme demands corners who can handle responsibility without constant safety help, and Hood fits that mold. Taken together, Reese and Hood would do more than fill holes. They would rebalance the defense. Reese strengthens the middle and the edge simultaneously, while Hood stabilizes the perimeter. Suddenly, Dallas has answers at all three levels. Linebacker speed improves. Coverage flexibility increases. The defense becomes harder to predict and harder to exploit. This is why the 2026 draft looms so large for the Cowboys. With 2 first-round picks, they're not just drafting players. They are choosing an identity. Investing heavily on defense signals a commitment to winning games with balance, to no longer asking the offense to be perfect every week. It suggests an understanding that in January football, stops matter as much as points. There is, of course, no guarantee. Draft picks are projections, not promises. Reese must translate his versatility to the professional level. Hood must adjust to NFL route runners and passing concepts. But the logic behind the selections is sound and the fit is clear. If Dallas executes this plan, the Cowboys enter the 2026 season with a defense that looks faster, smarter, and more adaptable than it has in years. A defense capable of dictating terms rather than reacting. A defense that reflects the vision of its coordinator and the patience of a front office willing to build from the ground up. In the end, that is what makes this moment so compelling. Christian Parker's arrival was only the beginning. The real transformation starts when the Cowboys turn draft capital into foundational players. If Arvell Reese and Colton Hood are those players, Dallas will not just be filling needs. They will be laying the groundwork for a defense built to last. What's going on, Cowboys Nation? Appreciate everybody tuning in today. This is one of those long-form conversations, the kind you throw on while driving, working, or just thinking about the future of this team. No rush today. No quick takes. Just football, perspective, and honesty about where the Dallas Cowboys are right now and where they're headed. I want to start with something that's been sitting heavy with this fan base for a while now, and that's free agency. Because every year, we hear the same language. We like our guys. We believe in development. We're comfortable with the plan. And at some point, comfort becomes the enemy of progress. The NFL is not built for patience unless patience is paired with aggression at the right moments. And the Cowboys, for a long time now, have been choosing safety over urgency. You don't have to blow up your cap. You don't have to chase every shiny name. But when you see clear roster holes, when you see windows opening and closing, you have to act. Fans aren't asking for recklessness. They're asking for commitment. They're asking for proof that winning a championship is more important than winning the balance sheet. That naturally brings us to the quarterback conversation, and I know emotions spike every time this comes up. Dak Prescott has been the face of this franchise for years. He's been productive, he's been durable, and he's been a leader. But the NFL is ruthless, and long-term planning at quarterback is not betrayal. It's responsibility. Drafting a quarterback in the 2026 NFL Draft would not be a signal of panic. It would be a signal of intelligence. The best organizations don't wait until decline is obvious. They prepare while things are still stable. You draft, you develop, you create options. And if the young guy never plays, that's a good problem to have. What you cannot afford is being caught unprepared when the position that matters most suddenly becomes a question mark. As we shift into draft evaluations, one player who keeps popping up is Michigan defensive tackle Rayshon Benny. And this is the kind of name that doesn't trend on social media, but wins you games in December and January. Interior defensive linemen who can hold their ground, disrupt timing, and collapse pockets change everything. They make edge rushers better. They make linebackers cleaner. They make coverage easier. This defense has missed that kind of consistent interior presence. And when you zoom out, it's clear the Cowboys need to keep feeding the defensive pipeline. Edge rushers like our Mason Thomas, Romello Height, and Joshua Josephs all bring different tools, but they share one thing in common. They can get after the quarterback. In today's NFL, pressure is currency. You cannot have enough pass rushers. Rotations matter. Fresh legs matter. Injuries happen. The teams still standing in January are the ones that plan for that reality. The same logic applies to the secondary. Cornerback is no longer a luxury position. It's survival. Colton Hood, Julian Neal, Malik Muhammad. These are modern corners. Athletic, confident, willing to play on an island. The Cowboys have seen firsthand what happens when depth disappears at that position. You don't wait until it's a crisis. You draft early, you draft often, and you let competition sort the rest out. Now let's talk about something fans don't always like to admit out loud: cheering against other teams. When you see Cowboys fans rooting against the Seahawks, it's not hate for the sake of hate. It's understanding how draft positioning works. It's recognizing that your future is tied to things beyond your own record. Long-term thinking is uncomfortable, but it's necessary if you want sustained success. Trade rumors always light a spark, and one that keeps resurfacing is the idea of Dallas making a move for Browns cornerback Denzel Ward. This is not a small conversation. This is money, health, draft capital, and expectation all rolled into one. But elite talent rarely becomes available without complications. If you want to win now, you have to accept risk. The real mistake is refusing to even explore the option. Defense, overall, is where the next big decision lives, especially at coordinator. The defensive coordinator hire is not just about scheme. It's about philosophy. It's about adaptability. It's about leadership, whether it's Matt Burke, a surprise candidate, or even a bold swing like Sean McDermott. This decision will echo for years. The wrong hire stalls progress. The right hire elevates everyone. On offense, the idea of Brian Daboll in Dallas is intriguing for a reason. Creativity matters. Flexibility matters. Quarterbacks need answers when defenses adjust. The Cowboys' offense has been good, but good is not the goal. The goal is resilient. The goal is dangerous in multiple ways. The fit would matter, but the conversation itself tells you something important. Fans want evolution, which brings us to ownership and leadership. Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are always confident. That's not new, but confidence from leadership only matters if it aligns with results. Cowboys fans don't need promises. They need evidence. Evidence that when the window is open, the organization is willing to push. Re-signing a player like Jadeveon Clowney forces that exact kind of evaluation. A 2-year, $20 million deal with $15 million guaranteed is real money. You have to ask what you're buying: production, presence, leadership, or all three. These are the decisions contenders make carefully but decisively. Looking ahead to 2026 free agency, the big question isn't who will be available. It's whether Dallas will finally shift its identity. Aggressive teams don't wait for perfection. They move when opportunity knocks. And sometimes they create opportunity themselves. Some fans want the Cowboys to mirror the Rams' philosophy. Less attachment to picks, more focus on stars and timing. That approach carries risk, but it also carries trophies. Windows don't stay open forever. You either capitalize or you regret. That's why trade ideas like Rashawn Gary matter. That's why dreaming about a secondary with Minkah Fitzpatrick alongside a drafted talent like Caleb Downs isn't fantasy, it's strategy. It's asking what championship-level defense actually looks like in today's NFL. Even the smaller stories, the trolling, the coaching carousel, the constant movement across the league, serve as reminders. This league does not pause. It does not wait for comfort. It rewards clarity, boldness, and preparation. At the end of the day, this entire conversation comes down to one thing: direction. Are the Dallas Cowboys satisfied with being competitive, or are they obsessed with being champions? Because those two mindsets lead to very different decisions. And that's why this mailbag matters. That's why these conversations matter. And that's why we'll keep having them. Let's be very clear right from the start. This is not just another offseason for the Dallas Cowboys. This is not just another free agency cycle where fans get excited, mock contracts on Twitter, and then watch the team sign bargain veterans on one-year deals. The 2026 NFL free agency period is a referendum. A referendum on Jerry Jones. A referendum on the Cowboys' front office philosophy. And a referendum on whether this organization truly understands how championships are built in the modern NFL. Because for the first time in years, the Cowboys will not be able to hide behind the usual excuses. The salary cap excuse is gone. The "we're resetting the roster" excuse is gone. The "we believe in our young guys" excuse will wear thin very quickly. Dallas will have money. Dallas will have options. And Dallas will be staring at a free agent class loaded with players who directly address the team's biggest flaws. The only real question left is this: will the Cowboys finally act like a desperate contender, or will they continue to behave like a comfortable brand? When you study this 2026 free agent class, one thing jumps out immediately. The league is offering Dallas solutions at almost every pressure point on the roster. Running back, offensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, secondary. This is not a thin market. This is not a year where you have to convince yourself that mid-tier players are secretly stars. These are real names, real production, real impact. And that's why this free agency is so dangerous for Dallas, because if they fail again, there will be no one left to blame but themselves. Let's start with the position that has quietly defined the Cowboys' offensive inconsistency over the last few seasons: running back. For years, Dallas has tried to outthink the position. They've treated it like a plug-and-play role, something you can rotate cheaply and survive. And while that worked for some teams, it has not worked for a Cowboys offense that still relies heavily on timing, play action, and defensive manipulation. That's where a player like Breece Hall changes everything. Breece Hall is not just a running back. He is an offensive weapon who forces defensive coordinators to alter their game plan before the ball is even snapped. He can run inside zone, outside zone, gap concepts, and he can motion out wide and win against linebackers in space. If Breece Hall is in a Cowboys uniform, suddenly linebackers hesitate. Safeties creep forward. Play action becomes believable again, and the entire offense breathes. Yes, he will be expensive, but championship windows are not built on discounts. Then you look at Travis Etienne, and you see a different kind of solution. Etienne brings speed, fluidity, and mismatchability. He thrives in space. He's dangerous on screens, angle routes, and wheel routes. In a Cowboys offense that has sometimes felt rigid and predictable, Etienne injects creativity. He allows you to stress defenses horizontally, not just vertically. He fits the modern NFL, where explosive plays often come from simple concepts executed by elite athletes. Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, represents controlled chaos. He is violent, decisive, and relentless. He's the type of back you hand the ball to in the fourth quarter when everyone in the stadium knows what's coming, and it doesn't matter. For a Cowboys team that has struggled to close games late in the season, Walker offers identity. He brings an edge that Dallas has lacked since its most physical offenses. And then there are value options like J.K. Dobbins and Tyler Algier, backs who may not dominate headlines, but dominate contact. These are tone setters. These are players who make defenses feel every carry. For a front office that loves flexibility, this is where smart aggression can live. But offense does not survive without protection, and that brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths about the Cowboys. The offensive line is no longer a strength. It's a question mark. This is why the 2026 free agent tackle class is critical. Braden Smith represents stability. He's not flashy, but he's reliable, powerful, and technically sound. He gives you competence at a premium position, something Dallas has taken for granted in the past. Jonah Williams offers versatility and experience. He's played in big games. He's seen elite pass rushers. He understands NFL trench warfare. For a team trying to protect its quarterback investment, that matters. Veterans like Cam Robinson, Trent Brown, and Kelvin Beachum all represent different levels of risk and reward. Brown brings size and power. Robinson brings athleticism. Beachum brings professionalism and experience. These are not long-term fantasies. These are real solutions to real problems. If Dallas ignores this position again, it won't be optimism. It will be negligence. Defensively, the conversation becomes even more urgent when you talk about pass rush. Championship defenses do not rely on hope. They rely on pressure. And this 2026 class is loaded with edge defenders who can tilt the field. Trey Hendrickson is relentless. He wins with effort, technique, and motor. He doesn't need perfect conditions to be effective. He creates chaos. Jaylon Phillips brings explosiveness and upside. He's the type of defender who forces offenses to slide protection, and that alone creates opportunities for everyone else. Then there are names that still carry fear: Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Yes, they're veterans. Yes, there are durability questions. But when healthy, they still command respect. And sometimes, respect is all you need to change how an offense plays. Add players like Kwity Paye, and suddenly Dallas has options. Real options. Not developmental hopes, immediate contributors. At linebacker, speed is the currency of the modern NFL, and this class delivers. Devin Lloyd, Quincy Williams, and Quay Walker all represent range, aggression, and sideline-to-sideline ability. These are linebackers who can survive in space, who can chase quarterbacks, who can close passing lanes. For a Cowboys defense that has been exposed by misdirection and athletic quarterbacks, this matters. Even value veterans like Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson offer intelligence and toughness, traits that don't always show up on the stat sheet, but win games in December. Finally, the secondary, the last line of defense, and often the difference between good teams and great ones. Corners like Jamal Dean, Alani Taylor, Eric Stokes, Rick Woolen, and Greg Newsome too offer length, physicality, and scheme flexibility. These are not panic signings. These are players you build coverage plans around. At safety, names like Cam Curl, Jaquan Brisker, Reed Blankenship, Kobe Bryant, and Jalen Thompson give Dallas versatility. Box safeties, deep safeties, hybrid defenders, the kind of players who allow defensive coordinators to disguise intentions and steal possessions. So when you zoom out and look at the entire picture, one thing becomes painfully obvious. The 2026 free agent market is not the problem. The money will not be the problem. The talent will not be the problem. The only problem left is courage. Will Jerry Jones finally treat free agency like a weapon instead of a risk? Will the Cowboys finally stop waiting for everything to align perfectly? Or will this be another year where opportunity passes and excuses replace ambition? Because in 2026, history won't care about intentions. It will only remember decisions are built in the modern NFL. Because for the first time in years, the Cowboys will not be able to hide behind the usual excuses. The salary cap excuse is gone. The "we're resetting the roster" excuse is gone. The "we believe in our young guys" excuse will wear thin very quickly. Dallas will have money. Dallas will have options. And Dallas will be staring at a free agent class loaded with players who directly address the team's biggest flaws. The only real question left is this: will the Cowboys finally act like a desperate contender, or will they continue to behave like a comfortable brand? When you study this 2026 free agent class, one thing jumps out immediately. The league is offering Dallas solutions at almost every pressure point on the roster. Running back, offensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, secondary. This is not a thin market. This is not a year where you have to convince yourself that mid-tier players are secretly stars. These are real names, real production, real impact. And that's why this free agency is so dangerous for Dallas, because if they fail again, there will be no one left to blame but themselves. Let's start with the position that has quietly defined the Cowboys' offensive inconsistency over the last few seasons: running back. For years, Dallas has tried to outthink the position. They've treated it like a plug-and-play role, something you can rotate cheaply and survive. And while that worked for some teams, it has not worked for a Cowboys offense that still relies heavily on timing, play action, and defensive manipulation. That's where a player like Breece Hall changes everything. Breece Hall is not just a running back. He is an offensive weapon who forces defensive coordinators to alter their game plan before the ball is even snapped. He can run inside zone, outside zone, gap concepts, and he can motion out wide and win against linebackers in space. If Breece Hall is in a Cowboys uniform, suddenly linebackers hesitate. Safeties creep forward. Play action becomes believable again, and the entire offense breathes. Yes, he will be expensive, but championship windows are not built on discounts. Then you look at Travis Etienne, and you see a different kind of solution. Etienne brings speed, fluidity, and mismatchability. He thrives in space. He's dangerous on screens, angle routes, and wheel routes. In a Cowboys offense that has sometimes felt rigid and predictable, Etienne injects creativity. He allows you to stress defenses horizontally, not just vertically. He fits the modern NFL, where explosive plays often come from simple concepts executed by elite athletes. Kenneth Walker, on the other hand, represents controlled chaos. He is violent, decisive, and relentless. He's the type of back you hand the ball to in the fourth quarter when everyone in the stadium knows what's coming, and it doesn't matter. For a Cowboys team that has struggled to close games late in the season, Walker offers identity. He brings an edge that Dallas has lacked since its most physical offenses. And then there are value options like J.K. Dobbins and Tyler Allgeier, backs who may not dominate headlines, but dominate contact. These are tone setters. These are players who make defenses feel every carry. For a front office that loves flexibility, this is where smart aggression can live. But offense does not survive without protection, and that brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths about the Cowboys. The offensive line is no longer a strength. It's a question mark. This is why the 2026 free agent tackle class is critical. Braden Smith represents stability. He's not flashy, but he's reliable, powerful, and technically sound. He gives you competence at a premium position, something Dallas has taken for granted in the past. Jonah Williams offers versatility and experience. He's played in big games. He's seen elite pass rushers. He understands NFL trench warfare. For a team trying to protect its quarterback investment, that matters. Veterans like Cam Robinson, Trent Brown, and Kelvin Beachum all represent different levels of risk and reward. Brown brings size and power. Robinson brings athleticism.